So, good day, people. This is Miami Webfest. My name is Paul Olele, and today's episode we have Lauren Anders Brown. She's a film director, a humanitarian documentary director, and she's also a member of the Royal Society of Arts, the Royal Society of Public Health Frontline Club directors in the UK, Women in Film, and TV UK, NYWIFT, and the TED member. And she can also draw a range of experiences when speaking on film festivals and public events. How is everything going, Lauren?
Great, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope I mentioned all your credentials. I hope there's nothing I missed out.
You did great. Thank you so much. I know it's a mouthful to say.
Yeah, it's fine. So how did the process of filmmaking start for you when you began your journey?
Well, my journey actually started very, very young. So my father used to run a studio in New York. And so I grew up around film equipment and sound stages, actors and actresses and technicians. And I would, instead of making forts out of pillows and blankets, I would make them out of sandbags and C-stands and whatever scraps of duvetine I could find. So, it's almost like it's in my blood at that point. I always knew I wanted to be a storyteller and a filmmaker from a very young age. I just didn't know where I was going to land on set. And I was really fascinated with cameras. And so worked my way up, joined the camera union and worked my way up in the camera department. And all the while learning what everyone else was doing on set all the time from a very young age. So I became quite self-sufficient and got a little tired of, no offense to anyone that does narrative or, like drama or television, but I couldn't just sit still on a soundstage listening to the same lines being repeated over and over again. And I always had this kind of humanitarian aspect to me. I just didn't really know how it was going to fit into everything. And so I started to do documentary filmmaking alongside, my work on set in about 2013. And then eventually just switched over entirely to documentary because when you're a person that can film something or record sound and conduct interviews, you could be quite useful in difficult places to get cameras around the world.
That's interesting. So on your journey, were there any roadblocks, challenges? Because there's always, when you start off as an independent filmmaker, it's pretty much you starting from scratch and, things that might have to do with budget and things of like funding, like a personal project or something like that. So did you encounter some of those problems when you started off in the business?
Absolutely. And I think, I really encourage anyone who I've ever mentored or interned before me to always be trying to make sure you can keep yourself afloat, or else you'll never actually get to, the job or the position that you want to within the industry. And that can look like a lot of things. For me, it looked like continuing to do my camera assistant work on stages, on shows in New York, and then every now and then flying out to go and film somewhere else. And because the flying out part didn't pay the bills, but the part, working on a stage did. So always trying to keep your head afloat by doing both. And it's not easy. I got really lucky. I just got to do what's called second unit on a TV show that was very consistent. And I got along with the crew really well. They constantly needed additional cameras every other week or every week. So I was able to keep myself afloat quite well in that sense. But, other big barriers, I would be amiss to say for any females in the film industry that we don't face barriers, especially as a woman in the camera department. You're constantly, at least from my experience growing up, I was always questioned as to whether I could carry a case or push a cart, or if I was physically strong enough to do things. It might not have been through words, but it was definitely through stares. And, it's nice to see that that's now changing. I love seeing photos of pregnant women on set who are supported by their crew, and are still being able to, kind of work and do their job for as long as they feel comfortable to. I mean, I have a friend who was the camera assistant who worked, I think, literally until the week before she gave birth, and that's really cool. So I love seeing the changes and the empowerment that is changing now from when I started in the industry.
That's interesting. So now let's shift gears a little bit to the screener, when the shift change, when the shifts change actually. I saw the 31-minute screener, and I just wanted to know how the concept came about, because I know this is a 2-year-old, happened 2 years ago. It almost feels like a lifetime ago, because we're still living the same thing. But since those were like the early days of COVID, how were you able to come up with the idea so early on too as well? So early on as well, because I think this was what, April 2020. COVID had just been there for about probably not even a month, maybe like 3 weeks, because the whole world shut down in March, like 10th, 15th of 2020. So how was that concept brought to life?
So yeah, it was around the end of March, beginning of April. I actually was stuck outside of New York, because while it's my home city, I don't always live there anymore. But I wasn't too far from it. I'm where I am right now today, from a tiny island in Bermuda. But that was when I had first arrived here to visit my partner, who's a doctor working here. And they shut down the island, they shut down the airport, and they asked if he could stay because he was a doctor. And so we opted to stay here because it was where he could be most useful. And so I was stuck in this new place where I didn't know anyone, and we all had to isolate. I was in a hotel and had a lot of time on my hands. I had only brought a laptop with me because I wasn't expecting to really do any work. I was only supposed to be here for 4 days in the sun. And I was following what I could, because I think it was really hard. Everyone was either glued to the screens, or it was too much to handle, or somewhere in between. And the thing that really struck with me the most, and it was on a Zoom call that I had with someone, because people, I think, started to really start connecting, to check in on people, make sure they're okay. And it was with someone from New York that I hadn't connected with in a while. And she was telling me about the Clap for Heroes at 7 p.m. and how every day the city of New York went outside on their balconies or opened their windows, banging pots and pans or clapping because of the work that was being done. And I don't know if anyone here, I'm sure there'll be some New Yorkers in attendance and watching and listening to this, but that is not something we are known to do. Like, as New Yorkers, we'll help out our neighbor because we know them, but we won't always make big grandstand gestures like that, especially as a sign of unity. And that really just touched me, as far as, wow, this is huge. If this is what everyone is committed to doing every day, in a place in a city that never sleeps, in a place where everyone can kind of easily just operate on their own and not interact or support each other. I was really, really touched by that. And I thought, there has to be a way, there has to be more to this. There has to be more stories. There has to be, we need to capture these moments, and we have to do it fast. And so I reached out to my friend Jess, who's a producer. And so she started working with me on trying to get contributors. I knew most of the contributors originally, but she found some new people for me as well. And, what we were looking for was essential workers. Anyone who was an essential worker, because the Clap for Heroes wasn't just for the medical community, it was for everyone who was still doing a job at that point in time. And just asking them to document 5 days of their life, and their highs and lows, and to, say whatever they were afraid of, whatever they were annoyed with, whatever they were angry with, whatever they were sad about, and whatever they were joyful about, because I think this time really changed people's perspectives on what was important in life. And so for me, it was capturing it in whatever format that was. And so we chose a selfie style video format for everyone, because that was something that everyone could do in a short period of time. And we went with it. And I think at the end of the day, it's something that has a lot of longevity. So it is 2 years old now, but it will years from now, when we want to go back and see what those first few days were like, when we just hit that threshold, when we were just hitting that peak, and remember kind of what it was like to not know what was going to happen next.
Interesting. And it's also interesting you brought up the point about the Clap for Heroes thing. I didn't know they were doing that in New York. I knew they were doing it somewhere in the UK, but I didn't think it was something that was done over here. So that's actually an interesting dynamic, and interesting to know that the essential workers were praised for their bravery and for their job during a global shutdown. So how do you feel about being featured at the Miami Web Fest? How do you feel, this story has now taken, I'd say, maybe center stage, and it's now going to be shown to a wider audience in Miami? How was that experience? How's that feeling for you as a filmmaker?
Oh, I mean, it's an incredible experience. And to be honest, I think now is a much better time than 2 years ago. I think, while I'm so grateful to the other festivals that this series has attended, I think it was a bit hard for people to watch, to be quite honest, so soon to everything happening. And so I think 2 years of distance is really what an audience needs. And I'm really grateful to Miami Web Fest for seeing the potential in that.
That's interesting, and you make a good point, because now, like I said earlier, I'm like, it feels like a long time ago. It feels like this happened 50 years ago, but honestly, it's really 2 years ago now. I can remember what I was doing at that point, and it's so fast how like everything has like just really like gone by, and it's not like it's over, but it's still there, but it's just like in a, I don't know, in a different version. It's not quite there yet, but it's not like how it was back then. So I looked through your bio, your info, and I found that you've produced other documentaries as well, the World Cup project, and Forged. So do you have any upcoming projects that we should expect from you pretty soon?
So I'm still working on doing the impact work for Forged and for my other documentary, Will Menstruate, that came out before then. And that's really interesting, because I think, as filmmakers, we can make a film, great, awesome. It can get shown and people can see it, or they cannot see it. But, can we actually change minds with the film? Can we actually make an impact with the film? And so I think, right now, for the rest of this year, I'm looking at focusing on extending the longevity and the impact of those two films, and really excited to see what comes next year as far as what might be next. I don't have anything necessarily slated, but I think I am overdue for doing something that includes the climate and the environment, especially now 2 years later, I'm somehow based in Bermuda, and so I think that there's definitely something that will come of my time here with either the ecology, the wildlife, or, I mean, it's a huge whale migration point as well here. So something's going to come, and I like to wonder rather than worry what that might be.
That's interesting. We anticipate your upcoming project. I guess lastly is, do you have any advice for an upcoming filmmaker like yourself? Is there anything that they must do, anything they have to do to succeed in this in this industry as a filmmaker? Because it's not easy. So any advice that upcoming filmmakers can have in terms of developing themselves?
Yeah, I'd say find a mentor. And I know that sounds very straightforward and cheesy, but honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for some of the inspiring people that came before me. And it doesn't have to be a formal mentorship. It doesn't have to be, hey, let's check in every week, but just someone that you can connect with on a somewhat regular basis, that you can talk to about the challenges you face at work, or the creative challenges that you might have, or a mental block, and just to bounce ideas off of. But having a person that's like a good sounding board like that can really help you move your career forward.
Interesting. So we thank you so much, Lauren, for taking some time out of your day to give us some insight on when the shifts change. Very, very, very interesting documentary, 30-minute documentary that follows the life of essential workers and how they experienced it during the height of COVID-19. I implore everybody to go check out the project. It's a very, very interesting storyline, and it follows multiple people around New York City. Lauren, we look forward to hopefully seeing you someday at Miami Web Fest. And we also look forward to screening your or seeing the screener of your documentary at the Web Fest. We look forward to everything. And the fun begins September 29th to October 2nd in Miami. Lauren, we thank you again for taking some time out of your day to speak with us. Thank you, and have a good day, people.